All right, are you ready for another deep dive? This time you've brought us a manuscript, and I gotta say, it's like a mashup of an old apothecary's guide and a spell book.
It really is a fascinating glimpse into the world of 17th century medical practices.
Yeah, and it seems like they weren't afraid to get a little, shall we say, creative with their healing methods.
Occult physic, that's what they called it, where healing wasn't just about herbs and potions, but about harnessing the power of, well, everything, really, from the cosmos to the mind.
So, like, we're not talking chicken soup here, are we?
No, no chicken soup in this manuscript. We're talking elephant stones, ground up tortoise eggs, you name it.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Elephant stones, tortoise eggs. Where do we even begin with this?
Well, it reflects a time when the lines between medicine, magic, and folklore were basically non-existent.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get that vibe.
People back then, they truly believed in this deep connection between all things in nature.
So, like, everything was connected.
Everything. The stars, the plants, the animals, us. You name it.
All right, that's a pretty big concept to wrap our heads around. But how does it actually play out in these remedies? Like, what kind of animal stuff are we talking about?
Well, let's start with the animal-based remedies. You'll be surprised by the sheer variety, and some of them are pretty unexpected, to say the least.
Okay, hit me with it. What's the most unexpected thing they used?
Let's see. For example, beaver tongue. They thought that could cure apoplexy.
Apoplexy, that's like a stroke, right?
Exactly. And then you've got things like hedgehog skin caps for headaches.
Hedgehog skin caps. I don't even know what that would look like.
I can only imagine. And then there's, well, this one's a bit out there, but they thought wearing a live bear's dried testicles could induce fear-based dreams in someone.
Whoa, hold up. They were messing with people's dreams, like intentionally.
Well, it's all tied into this idea of sympathetic magic, you see.
Okay, sympathetic magic. Explain that one to me.
It was a central idea in occult physic. The belief was that, like, affects like, meaning if an animal had certain traits like strength, speed, whatever, using its parts could somehow transfer those qualities.
So it's not just the ingredient itself, but what it represents, like symbolically.
Exactly. The manuscript is full of examples like this, like powdered camel hair, instant bleeding stopper, they thought, and camel teeth, supposed to induce menstruation.
Okay, so it's a lot about symbolism and the power they attributed to these things. But did any of it actually work?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While we can't say for sure, it's worth remembering that the placebo effect is a real thing. Even today, belief and expectation play a huge role in healing.
Right, so even if the ingredients themselves weren't, like, scientifically effective, the power of suggestion could have had an impact.
Absolutely. And speaking of influences, beyond just the animal parts, the author of this manuscript, he was really big on astrology too, especially when it came to the timing of, well, everything.
Wait, so they were consulting the stars for their healthcare?
Oh, absolutely. The manuscript stresses how crucial it was to gather ingredients under specific planetary influences. For instance, they thought St. John's wort, a pretty common herb, was most potent against certain ailments if you harvested it while the sign was in Aries.
It's pretty wild to think about how ingrained astrology was in their medical practices. It wasn't some fringe thing. It was part of their core beliefs.
It reflects a worldview where everything was connected. Your body, the earth, the stars. It was all part of one big cosmic dance.
So it's not just about treating the physical body. It's about aligning with these larger forces.
Precisely. And this manuscript, it takes that idea and runs with it. So far, we've got animal parts, astrological timing. What else is in store for us?
Well, you mentioned something about lucky charms earlier, didn't you?
Yeah, yes, the talismans. We can't forget about those. They use those alongside their herbal remedies for an extra layer of, let's say...
Okay, so we're adding lucky charms to the mix now. I am so in. Tell me more about these talismans.
Well, think of them as a way to focus intention and belief. For example, to cure a horse of farcy, which is a nasty, contagious disease, they recommended wearing a cluster of mistletoe berries.
Wait, mistletoe? Like the holiday decoration?
The very same. But back then, it was believed to have all sorts of protective and healing properties.
I guess even back then, people needed a little extra luck, huh?
You could say that. And you know, even today, we still see this idea of lucky objects having power. Think about it. A lucky rabbit's foot, a four-leaf clover. It might seem superstitious, but there's a psychological element at play there.
Right, like the placebo effect we talked about. If you believe something will help, it just might.
Exactly. And that's something this manuscript really drives home, the power of belief in healing.
So it's not just about what you put in your body, but also the mental and spiritual framework surrounding it. It's already blowing my mind, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. What else does occult physic reveal about the 17th century approach to healing?
Oh, we've only just begun. There's a whole lot more to uncover in this manuscript, trust me. Remember those stones we talked about earlier? The ones for influencing
Oh
dreams?
yeah, like a 17th century dream catcher, right? Tell me more about those.
Well, it's not quite a dream catcher, but the idea is kind of similar. They thought wearing specific stones around your neck could shape your dreams. Like there's this one called astrates, and it was supposed to ward off nightmares, help you sleep peacefully.
Interesting, like a protective charm for your mind.
Yeah.
Did they have any good dream stones, like one that would help you dream about winning the lottery or something?
I didn't find any get-rich-quick dream stones, unfortunately. But there is mention of using certain stones for conception and childbirth, so they thought these stones could influence more than just your dreams, maybe even fertility.
Wow, they really attributed a lot of power to these objects. I wonder, did they see this as pure magic, or was there some kind of logic behind it all?
Well, you got to remember that for people back then, superstition and belief in the supernatural, that was just part of life. They saw connections between the natural world and human experience that we might not get today.
So it's not just about the stones themselves, but what they symbolized within their belief system.
Precisely. Take mistletoe, for example. It wasn't just a plant to them, it was loaded with symbolism and folklore, representing protection and healing. These talismans, in a way, they were like a physical manifestation of their beliefs, a way to connect with the healing process.
Like wearing a reminder of the power they believed in.
Exactly. And even though we don't wear mistletoe for protection these days, the idea that belief can influence healing, that's still around. Think about the placebo effect. The power of suggestion is real.
So the methods might seem outdated to us, but the underlying ideas, they're still relevant in a way. Okay, enough about dreamstones for now. What else is in this manuscript?
This manuscript's full of surprises. There's a whole section on plants and trees for healing, but always with that blend of astrology and, well, magic. For instance, they claim a piece of wood from a lime tree, inscribed with a certain symbol, and the name of someone with a nosebleed can instantly stop the bleeding when you burn it.
Wait, seriously, that sounds a little like voodoo, doesn't it?
It does a bit. But remember, they weren't thinking about magic the way we do today. It was more about a system of knowledge that combined natural remedies with a belief in the power of symbols and rituals.
So it's like using a combination of physical things and mental focus to make healing happen.
Exactly. And even though some of these methods seem far-fetched to us now, it's important to remember the cultural and intellectual context they came from. To really understand them, we need to try to see the world through their eyes.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
So besides lime tree magic, what other crazy cures do they come up with?
Well, there's this section on poison, and it's pretty wild. They had this complex remedy using quicksilver and aquafortis. Basically, they'd filter and distill these substances over and over again.
Quicksilver and aquafortis. Those sound like ingredients from a Harry Potter potion.
They definitely have a certain alchemical vibe, that's for sure. They thought this concoction could cure not just regular poison, but also the plague and all sorts of infections. They even thought it could treat leprosy by causing the patient to break out in blisters all over their body.
Whoa, that sounds intense. I don't think I'd be brave enough to try that.
Probably not. But it's amazing how much faith they had in this remedy. They described it as a gift from God, something that could purify the body and restore health.
It seems like their belief in the remedy was as strong as their belief in a higher power.
That's a great point. For them, healing wasn't just about physical treatments. It was a spiritual journey, relying on both earthly remedies and divine help.
Speaking of spirituality, you said earlier that they believed in aligning yourself with God's will for healing. Did they actually give advice on how to do that?
They did, and it's surprisingly relevant to things people do today. They recommend things like prayer, meditation, doing good deeds, and just generally living a virtuous life.
So it's not just about fixing your body, but taking care of your soul, too.
Exactly. They believed that being morally and spiritually pure was key to staying healthy and avoiding sickness. It's a way of thinking that connects your mind, body, and spirit, an idea that's becoming popular again today.
This 17th century manuscript keeps blowing my mind. We've got dreamstones, poison cures, and even a spiritual side to healing. Their approach to health was way more complex than I ever imagined.
It definitely makes you think twice about how we view health and wellness today.
Okay, so far we've talked about animal remedies, astrology, talismans, and even spirituality.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that keeps popping up, and I gotta ask about it. You keep mentioning these weird animal parts, and honestly, some of them are making me kind of queasy.
I get it. Some of the remedies in this book are definitely not for the squeamish.
So tell me, what's the most bizarre animal-based cure you've found in occult physic? Lay it on me.
Well, you asked for it. The one that stands out the most is using wolf dung to help with stomach ache.
Wait, what? They actually used wolf poop as medicine.
The book doesn't say they ate it exactly. It says they tie it to the belly or neck to relieve pain. Specifically, they used dung from a wolf that had eaten bones.
Okay, that's slightly less horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But still, wolf dung. How did they even come up with that?
Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe they watched wolves eating carrion and saw how tough their stomachs were. They might have thought that the dung, after breaking down those bones, had some special power to heal the stomach.
It's definitely a strange idea, but I guess stranger things have happened in the history of medicine.
That's for sure. And while we might never know the real reason behind these remedies, they give us a peek into how resourceful our ancestors were.
Okay, so we've got wolf dung for stomach aches. What other interesting animal cures did they use?
Well, there's one that says you can cure a sore throat with badger's blood. You just wash your hands in the blood and, for good measure, take a nice long sniff.
Ugh, that's just... No, thank you. I think I'm losing my appetite.
I don't blame you. But remember, back then, people had a very different relationship with nature. They saw animals as more than just food or pets. They were powerful allies against disease.
I guess when you're really sick, you'd try anything, huh?
Probably true. And while we might cringe at the thought of using animal parts like that, it was pretty common for a long time.
Right, like those old paintings of apothecaries with shelves full of dried herbs and animal skulls and who knows what else.
Exactly. Those apothecaries were like the pharmacies of their time. Their remedies might seem weird to us now, but they were based on what people knew back then.
Okay, so badger blood for sore throats, wolf dung for stomach aches. What else? Hit me with your best shot.
All right, brace yourself. For epilepsy, or the falling sickness, they said to take the horn of a stag killed in October, grind it into powder, and wait for it. Drink it in white wine.
Wait, the whole antler?
The text doesn't say for sure, but it does say to use 1 dram of the powdered horn.
I can't imagine trying to swallow that. Did they have some 17th century version of a blender?
I'm afraid not. But what's really interesting is that the author doesn't just list these remedies. He describes them with a sense of awe, like he truly believes they work.
Like he's sharing some ancient secret passed down from generations of healers.
That's a great way to put it. And while we may not agree with everything they believed, you have to admire their faith and conviction.
Okay, I think I've had enough animal cures for one day. My stomach started to feel a little funny. Let's talk about something a bit less, well, gross.
Sounds good to me. What would you like to talk about next?
We've talked a lot about the physical side of healing, but this book also talks about the mental side of things, right? Like the power of the mind and all that.
Absolutely. A big chunk of the book is dedicated to exploring how imagination and belief can cause and cure illness.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Tell me everything.
Well, the author starts by saying that the mind can have a huge impact on the body. He mentions these ancient healers who claimed they could cure diseases and even raise the dead just by using their will and imagination.
Wait, raise the dead? Seriously?
Well, we can't really prove that, but the idea itself is fascinating. He definitely believed that the mind has powers we haven't even begun to understand.
Like they're tapping into some hidden energy inside us?
Kind of, yeah. He doesn't use modern words like placebo effect or mind-body connection, but that's essentially what he's talking about.
So it's not just about the physical remedies, it's about believing that you'll get better.
Exactly. The author believed that a strong imagination is essential for any treatment to work. If you truly believe you'll be healed, your chances of recovery go way up.
Like they were practicing the power of positive thinking hundreds of years before it became a thing.
That's a great way to put it. And while we might not buy into everything he believed, his focus on the mind's role in healing was pretty ahead of his time.
It makes you think, how much of our health is actually affected by what we think and believe?
That's a good question to think about. And while modern medicine has come a long way in understanding how diseases work, the role of the mind in healing is still a mystery in many ways.
It's like this 17th century manuscript is telling us to look beyond the physical stuff and consider how powerful our minds really are.
It reminds us that even practices from long ago can offer valuable insights into the complex world of human health and well-being.
All right, let's dive back into this book. What other mind-blowing remedies can we find in occult physic?
There's a section on infertility that I found really interesting. The author talks about a remedy using a stone called the electorius, supposedly found in the stomach of a capon.
A capon, that's a castrated rooster, right?
That's right. And according to the author, this stone, if worn by a woman, can help her get pregnant.
Okay, that's a new one. What does a rooster's stomach have to do with fertility?
It's hard to say. Maybe they thought that even though the capon couldn't reproduce, it still had some kind of fertility energy that could be passed on.
It's a strange idea, but I guess we're talking about 17th century logic here.
True. And even if we don't understand their reasoning, these remedies show us what people believed back then.
Okay, let's move on to something a little less, well, rooster-related. What else in occult physic highlights the power of the mind?
Well, the author also talks about using talismans and amulets for healing and protection. He thought that certain objects, if you charge them with the right intentions, could ward off bad energy and promote well-being.
So like those lucky charms people carry around today, but with a deeper spiritual meaning.
Exactly. For example, he recommended wearing a piece of coral to protect against the evil eye.
The evil eye, like the curse.
Yeah, people in the 17th century really believed in the evil eye. They thought a mean look could make you sick or bring bad luck.
So it's like a spiritual shield to protect you from negativity.
In a way, yes. And while we might not believe in the evil eye today, using objects to ward off bad vibes is still a thing in many cultures.
Like those crystals some people use for healing and protection. Maybe there's more to it than we think.
Maybe so. But the important thing is this belief system shows how much our thoughts and beliefs can impact our health and well-being.
Okay, so we've got capon stones for fertility, coral for protection, and a whole lot of belief in the power of the mind. Anything else stand out?
There's one more thing I want to mention. It's not as exciting as some of the other remedies, but it's just as important.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
The author really emphasizes how crucial it is to live your life according to God's will. He believed that true healing can only happen when you recognize a higher power at work.
So it's not just about using the right ingredients or wearing the right charms. It's about connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. He saw illness not just as a physical problem, but as something that could happen if you strayed from the right path.
It's a reminder that back then, faith and spirituality were a big part of life, and that included how they approached health and healing.
And while modern medicine has mostly separated itself from religion, the idea that spirituality plays a role in well-being is making a comeback in some places.
It's like we're rediscovering the value of looking at the whole person, mind, body, and spirit.
Maybe so. But the key takeaway is that we should keep learning from the past, even if it means challenging our own ideas about health and healing.
This deep dive into occult physic has been quite an adventure. We covered everything from weird animal remedies to the power of the mind and the influence of astrology. It's clear that for people in the 17th century, healing was about a lot more than just treating the physical body. It was woven into their beliefs and their relationship with the natural world.
It definitely challenges our modern perspective on health and wellness.
Absolutely. But before we get too philosophical, let's get back to the book and see what other interesting remedies we can find in this 17th century medical treasure trove.
Okay, so back to this book of ancient cures. You were saying that occult physic doesn't just tell you what to use, but also when to gather the ingredients. What's the thinking behind that?
They believed that the stars and planets actually affected how powerful natural remedies were. Sounds strange now, but it was a big part of how they saw the world.
Can you give me an example? Like, how did they actually use this idea?
Sure. One example is this herb called Rosa Solis. They said to get the most out of it, you had to pick it when the sun was in its own house, ideally in the sign of Leo.
Okay, hold on. What does the sun being in its own house even mean?
In astrology, each planet has certain zodiac signs associated with it called its houses. The sun's house is Leo, so they thought the sun was strongest when it was in Leo, and that picking Rosa Solis then would make it super potent for healing.
Like they were capturing the sun's energy at its peak. Exactly. Boosting the plant's natural healing power, they thought. It shows how much they understood natural cycles and believed the stars could affect things down here on Earth.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So what did they use this Rosa Solis for anyway?
They said that if you prepared it right, Rosa Solis could cure consumption of the lungs, what we call tuberculosis today, and other lung problems, too.
Tuberculosis was a really serious disease back then, often deadly. So they were using this sun-powered herb to fight a killer disease.
That's right. And the author doesn't just mention the ingredient, he gives you step-by-step instructions on how to make the remedy. Drying the herb, grinding it into powder, mixing it with stuff like saffron and dates, cinnamon, the whole works.
It sounds like they were really careful with every step, like it was some kind of sacred ceremony.
Exactly. It wasn't just a recipe, it was an act of healing for the body and the soul.
This whole idea of timing things with the stars is amazing. Are there other examples of how they used astrology in healing?
There's one part where they talk about using the moon to figure out how serious a disease is.
Wait a minute. They were diagnosing illnesses based on the moon.
Not exactly diagnosing, more like figuring out what might happen. They'd look at the patient's urine under the moonlight during certain phases of the moon. They thought how the urine looked could tell them secrets about the disease, like whether the person would get better or not.
So they used the moon as a guide, looking to the cosmos for answers.
Exactly. It might seem strange to us, but it shows just how connected they felt to the celestial world. They believed what happened in the stars affected what happened here on Earth, including people's health and lives.
Okay, I need a minute to process this whole moon diagnosis thing. In the meantime, can we get back to something a little more down to earth? We've talked about all these fancy ingredients, but did they ever use any regular, everyday stuff in the remedies?
You might be surprised to hear this, but they did. The author includes a recipe for a healing salve made with some pretty basic stuff: sheep's tallow, dung, and wool.
Hang on, sheep poop. Are you serious?
The text says they mixed sheep dung with melted tallow and wool, strained it, and let it cool to make a salve.
I can only imagine what that smelled like. I guess when it comes to healing, you gotta do what you gotta do.
You said it. The author claimed this salve was good for all kinds of skin problems and could even help you sleep better.
So they were resourceful, using whatever they had on hand to make their remedies.
Exactly. It reminds us that even back then, people were always coming up with new ideas, finding creative ways to take care of themselves.
Besides that sheep dung salve, what other surprisingly practical remedies did they have?
For toothaches, they suggested a mix of hyssop, mint, hartshorn, and salt. Heat it up, grind it, and then form it into little rolls you could rub on your teeth.
Sounds like their version of toothpaste.
And the author claimed it not only cleaned your teeth, but also helped with the pain. Pretty cool how they used simple herbs and minerals to make their own remedies.
So sheep dung salve, herbal toothpaste, and a whole lot of belief in the power of the stars. This book really gives us a glimpse into a completely different way of thinking about healing.
It definitely challenges our modern ideas about health and wellness. It's amazing how much their medical practices were tied to their beliefs about nature, the cosmos, and the human mind.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From those crazy animal-based remedies to astrological timing and the power of belief, occult physic has shown us a fascinating side of 17th century healing.
It's a reminder that people have always tried to understand and take control of their health and well-being. And while some of their methods might seem odd to us now, they give us valuable insights into how medicine has evolved and how strong the human desire to heal has always been.
Exploring this manuscript has been an amazing journey. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into occult physic. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind.